Rick, you won't believe what just happened.
Jonathan, through his business, had done some advertising at a specific radio station, WSUB at the time. When he was in the station talking to the station's general manager about business, he, on his way out, just said,
"How hard would it be to start a Christian talk radio show?" And the manager looked at me and goes, "Oh, that's easy."
Of course, you're not expecting that kind of an answer from a radio station, so Jonathan says, "Well, I'll get back to you."
Well, I got up out of my seat. I was practically skipping down the hallway. I hit the outside and I called Rick immediately.
And I'm actually sitting with a client in my office, and he is yelling in my ear,
"Rick, you won't believe what just happened. He wasn't talking about doing a radio talk show."
I've always had a sense of being able to communicate with people. But the thing that really, really developed that in me in terms of spirituality was a Bible youth camp. I went to the camp when I was 9 years old. I went through all the way up through my teenage years until you can't go anymore. And then I volunteered to help, and I was one of the counselors, a tent brother first, and then a counselor, and then eventually became the assistant director, and then finally became the director of the camp. In the evening, we would have a campfire, and we'd do skits and things, and it would be a whole lot of fun, it'd be a lot of singing. And then at the end of it, as the director, I had the privilege of talking to the group. And I wouldn't go in with notes, and I would just talk to them right from my heart. And my object was to talk from my heart to theirs. And I'd walk around the fire and I'd look at their faces, and this just opened up this sense of connection, because I could see it. I could see that they're absorbing something. And for me, that is one of the most privileged things I've ever gotten to do in life. The first program was I tell you, it was again, it's one of those experiences that's locked into your head. I had never been in a radio studio before, and we walked in about 20 minutes before we got started, and we sat down, and they sat us behind the mic, and I'm getting a little bit, little tentative, because never done this before.
I've never seen my bud Rick ever scared until that day.
I must have had the deer in the headlights look in my eyes, because Jonathan knew me well, and he has said to me many times he'd never seen me afraid before.
And when he was scared, I was petrified.
I was scared, and started talking, and started, working through and getting comfortable, and then feeling like, okay, I can do this communication thing. And so I was beginning to rely on Jonathan in that first broadcast, and I'd look to him to enhance the comment.
And he's asking me questions, and I'm nodding, and I forget to answer verbally.
He would just nod his head, thinking, no, they can't hear you nod.
And he's like, "Jonathan, they can't see your nod. This is radio." And it was frightening. We got through that, and then over time, experience and practice, it became easier to do, and we really started having fun with it once we got through the scariness of it.
The struggle to actually produce a program is, at the time, I had a wife and 3 kids and a full-time job. I was in my own business, and so part of the struggle is trying to balance all of that. So between that and raising children who were just getting into my son was getting into his earlier teenage years. You have the needs of a wife and a family. So it was overwhelming. And for me, actually, off air, there was a lot of personal anxiety, because you're learning something new. You're trying to come up with ways of presenting it to make it valuable to somebody else, because you want them to walk away with hope. You want them to walk away with a feeling of, I want to hear them again next week, whatever it is they talk about.
Things were going along smoothly until the radio station said, "Well, we're changing to an all-Spanish format, so we're going to have to end your program."
And I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, they're going Spanish." And I said, "Well, but where's their talk radio going?" And he said, "Well, I think it's going to an FM station." I said, "Well, call them and ask them if there's room. I mean, see if they've got room for us. Make it on a weekend. Just make it some time."
So we called, talked to them, and they said, yes, we would fit on one of their other stations, and moved to FM.
And they did have an opening Sunday mornings from 6 to 8 in the morning. And so we talked about it, because I live an hour away from the station, And so for me to get to the studio by about 5:30, which means I would have to leave my house before 4:30, which means I had to get up at 3:30, 3:40 in the morning, and I'm not a morning person. So, but it was a trade-off. Either you commit yourself to getting up really early in the morning, or you're not going to be on the air. So to me, the answer was obvious. Learn how to get up at 3:40 in the morning on Sundays. It's only one day a week. God gave you the opportunity. He's going to give you the way to do it. We're going along, and now we've been on the air. We started in 1998, and sometime early in 2009, get an email from somebody in Indiana, his name is Jacob, and he, in his email, said he was interested in putting our program on Sunday mornings. So I called Jonathan. I said, Jonathan, you're not going to believe this, but there's some guy in Indiana who wants to have our program on. And I said, I'm not calling him right away because I just got the email. I don't want to appear too anxious. So I waited an hour. It killed me to wait the hour. And I called him, introduced myself, and we started talking.
So we actually took a trip to Indiana to meet face-to-face with Jacob.
You know, when we drove up to the building, it was this tiny little building, and we're thinking, oh, brother. But it was one of those things where it was bigger than it looked from the outside. And we went in, and he was good. He understood what he was doing. He was obviously well into the radio business.
And he told us what he liked. He told us what he didn't like. And here we're sitting there saying, over these years, no one has critiqued us. No one has helped us. And he said, well, I see the potential here, and I want to help you. If you're willing to take criticism, I can help you go to the next level of professionalism so that the message and the desire and hope that's in you can be brought out in a way people will receive it and appreciate it so much more than where it's coming from now.
For the average person, they're struggling in life. The average person goes through life and doesn't know how to manage all of the things they have to manage. So when you look at Christian questions, what I've always believed is that there is a relevance of Scripture to apply to every human being's life if they're open for it. So you take Bible principles, dealing with the struggles of life, dealing with making a living, dealing with having a job you don't like, dealing with spousal issues, dealing with raising children, dealing with the world going crazy around you, dealing with your car not starting. There are scriptural principles that you take and you say, okay, let's look at life and take this principle and see where it can apply. And we would plant it into everyday life. And the conclusion is, wow, that can help me be more hopeful, or that can help me be more driven, or that can help me be more disciplined, or that can help me put things in perspective. Scripture can always change your life. It can always make your life better and different because the relevance of how to live is all laid out in the Bible. Christian Questions, had been around for about 17 years, and it was the summer of 2015 that the gay marriage law passed in the United States. And we were going to do a program on gay marriage, and there was a lot of backlash to a typical Christian perspective on gay marriage. So we began to talk to Jacob about the idea of podcasting. Now, he had mentioned it to us several times before that, but just we weren't ready to hear it. But that subject actually was the impetus for us to begin to look at that, because we began to fear that there may come a time in the not-too-distant future that we may start to be monitored for what we're saying on the radio, even if it's our heartfelt, lifetime Christian beliefs, and be challenged on it. So podcasting became a venue to look at to say, let's go someplace where we can speak freely. We're not about bashing anything or anybody, and if anybody's ever listened to us, they know that, but to just be able to freely express what we believe the Scriptures teach. To do a professional podcast is not easy. It took months and months and months to do the prep work, to lay the groundwork with the website and all of the other things, and then you have to get the equipment, then you have to transfer what you do on radio to the podcasting. But the idea was not only to be able to speak freely, but now let's broadcast to the entire world. Now let's, instead of picking our localities where we broadcast live, now people can listen live online, but when you're podcasting, your whole objective is to send your message to whomever is anywhere in the world and let them listen. Welcome to Christian Questions. I'm Rick, and this is not your typical Christian commentary as we look at Bible-related topics from a different perspective. And you might say that ours is a long-term approach, as we've been broadcasting the good news of the gospel for over 18 years. So my dream for the podcast is to just have the gospel spread faster and broader than ever before, because the world is falling apart right before our eyes. And you need something to give people hope through this difficult transition. And the gospel, if you understand it, can give you hope to see through the tragedy. See, tragedy happens to everybody. If you have significant faith, faith knows how to see through tragedy so you can get to the other side of it. That's part of the hope. That's part of what we're here for. Christian Questions is the hardest thing that I have ever done in my entire life. But it's the most blessed thing I've ever done in my entire life.